Okay, does that microphone work? Can you hear me with that? Do I have to like turn on something? No? Can you hear me? Let me know if you can hear me. Hi. I don't know how to answer that, but okay, it's working. That's good. Oh, I just bought that mic and I haven't tried it yet. I just thought the body thing might work better, but I did accidentally break that thing anyway. Whew, I just ran upstairs for that. Okay, we'll just put that down there. And that down there. Yeah, they're really loud. But we just narrowly missed being interrupted by a lawnmower. I ran out and said, please, no, not right now. So we have like a half an hour before he wants to mow the lawn, or I told him roughly a half hour. So at least there's no lawnmower. I'm hot now. Oh, it's hot here. Thank you. I tried to do my hair nice today. Let's see here. So I was deciding what to read, and I decided on The Nun's Story, because I enjoyed that, and it's something Audrey would have read, and it's probably even the edition she had too. It's a very old one. So that's what I'm going to read some of today, and if you have any other suggestions for things to read for future live stream Audrey voice practice, let me know. I have a couple of things in mind, but it might be fun to read something kind of silly. I don't know. Or something modern. Not sure. Okay. Well. Yeah, maybe. Well, possibly. I'll think about that. Yeah. I'm not very good with improv. I took a class once, but I don't know. I need to work on that. So perhaps it's something I should practice as well. Yeah, it probably would be good. Just scared of it. Green eggs and ham. Yeah, that would be funny. Haven't read that in a while. Alright, okay, we'll get started reading as Audrey, The Nun's Story. I'm going to see if I can multitask and practice some smoking too. I don't want to burn the book, but well, let's see what I can do, because I need to practice everything, and there just went. Okay. So I got this awesome lighter, just because it looks cool. It's not all that convenient, but no, it doesn't even want to work right now. That's nice. That's why I brought a spare. But okay, so. This is so good for like incense and pipes and stuff. Anyway, let's not burn the book. And I have to say, it burns really quickly. I don't know about real cigarettes. I'll have to steal one at some point. Just try them. But the smoker's out of town right now, so I kind of missed the question. This is like an herbal cigarette. It's I forget what's in it, like catnip, little lettuces and no tobacco or nicotine. A little bit of weed. Just a little bit of weed. But yeah, okay. Let's see if we can not burn things, because I like this book. Alright. Oh boy. Multitasking. And it might take me a minute to like get into the voice, because sometimes it kind of, I have to get into it. A short black cape hooked at the neck and dropped without flair to the middle of the forearms. It was odd to be thinking about Lords as she put it on, as though that recent experience had had something decisive to do with her choosing the religious life. She bent her elbows and brought her hands together beneath the cape. I just inhaled smoke. Yes, it helps me sleep. That's my own voice, not Audrey. Yeah, and hemp is so useful for so many things. Can't say I'm an expert in it though. Let's see. It was a practice garment of sorts to be placed. Boy, this is kind of difficult. Smoke and talk. Replaced by the nun's robe after the 6 months postulancy, after her hands would have learned to stay still and out of sight, except when needed for nursing or for prayer. 40 other young women, mainly Belgian like herself, with a few English and Irish girls, stood with Gabrielle van der Mal in the anteroom to the cloister, putting on similar capes but taking more time about it, especially some red-knuckled girls from the farms who seemed to be searching through the folds of their capes for sleeves. And I'll try to look up and pay attention to notes you have, but I'm probably going to miss some, so I will have to look at them later. Because no, I have not practiced smoking, and this multitasking is challenging. Lord, she thought, I'm not that impressionable. But quite suddenly, she was riding again in the hospital train that made the annual pilgrimage, the only lay student nurse from the training school chosen by Sister William to help escort the convoy of bedridden patients from Belgium. The faith of the prostrate pilgrims that they would survive the journey and moreover return from there cured frightened her. I'll turn the page. That's getting a little hot on my fingers. I have more. What's the last word? Her pulse readings, her diagnostic eyes, even her nostrils that knew the smell of death, told her that some could not possibly live until Lord's, and she ran to Sister William crying. Fevers, blood spitting, cancers advanced to screaming stage, and not a sound out of any of them except crazy hopes. I've got 3 in the car who should be receiving last rites this very instant, sister. And Sister William had stopped her with a look. No one will die en route, my child, they never do, she said. I've taught you many things, Gabrielle, but what you are soon to see is beyond my competence to describe or prepare you for. Now say a pater for having called faith a crazy hope and go back to your duties. Lord's was a bonfire in her memory. It was made up of thousands of candles and burning cries, and a week of rising suns over an esplanade where stretcher cases lay side by side, end to end, waiting for a priest to come with the monstrance, I don't even know what that is, that gathered sun to its gold and blazed in the sign of the cross above the stretchers, which, with each individual benediction, a new voice, hoarse, hysterical, screaming or murmuring, joined the storm of sound which carried the glittering processional forward like a wave that never crested or broke until the last twisted body had been blessed. O Jesus, Son of David, cure me. And there were cures, she remembered, which she could see in the archives of X-rays that had been made before and after baths in St. Bernadette's water, changes in tissue textures, or even occasionally in the bone structures, which she could read like print on a page. Except I hear a cat. Something else smoking. I'll light another one. Let's see. On the journey back to Belgium, taking care of the same number of cases she had escorted out, she remembered how she had looked at the faces she bathed, still worn and emaciated with disease. Inexplicably, they seemed to have retained some of the glow that had played upon them when stretchers had been carried into the candlelit grotto at the foot of the Pyrenees. The happiness, she exclaimed to Sister William on her rounds. Naturally, my child, that is the real cure. Not those debatable X-rays I saw you poring over with the doctors who who consider only what films show. But this, Sister William inclined her head to the quiet wagon leap, as if the name of Jesus had been spoken. This is the visible grace given to all who go with faith. And then Sister William had given her sleeve a little tug in the discreet manner of the vowed, who, Gabrielle knew, because she had been educated by nuns, must never lay hands upon the other. Crazy hopes, the little nun whispered as she passed. The pull at her sleeve had been more unusual than Sister William's teasing words, for it was the attention-drawing language of nun to nun, rather than of nun to lay person. As if I were one of them, Gabrielle had thought with surprise. And now she was one of them, or very soon to be. She looked at her companions in the anteroom. Their introspective faces, flushed and slightly nervous, suggested that they too were going over the steps that had brought them to this prim parlour in a convent in Brussels. Gabrielle thought of her own steps consecutively. She began with childhood, with the cook, Françoise, who had never cut into bread without first tapping the knife in the sign of a cross over the big round loaf. The child who watched the bread-cutting ritual used to go with the cook to first Mass every day, not because she understood then anything of its significance, but because there was something wonderful and mysterious about candles and singing before sunlight, and the sight of so many grown-ups doing without breakfast until a small white wafer had been dropped upon their tongues. Then there were the visits she used to make with her doctor father, to homes in the provinces as they were in the old days, every one with the big old-fashioned rosary, hanging on the wall from two pegs spaced far enough apart to make the crucifix fall heart-shaped to a point at the base. You seldom saw such visible piety now, nor did you see nowadays the great single eye in a triangle, which used to be painted over the zinc bars of country cafes where her father refreshed himself after his rounds. She remembered his explaining that the strange, compelling design meant that the eye of God was upon the place and no cursing would be permitted. The old-fashioned religious childhood, she said. She thought, God was like one of the family, and this above all is why I am here. I learned to love him when I was very young, before Jean, long, long before. She pressed her clasped hands against her heart and looked at the austerely beautiful face of Sister Margarita, the mistress of postulants. She knew that she must be looking at une règle vivante, a living rule, of whom it was said that if the holy rule of the order were ever destroyed or lost from printed record, it could be recaptured in entirety by studying such perfect nun. Sister Margarita's immense coif, starched stiff as a shell and curving shell-like about the ageless Flemish face, turned almost imperceptibly as the mistress examined her new postulants to make sure that each had her black veil pinned over the hair and her cape hooked properly. Then she spoke in a voice exactly pitched to reach to the edge of the caped crowd and not a breath beyond. Now we will go to the chapel for a little colloquy with God. She turned and opened, although it were a soundless panel of felt, a heavy oak door, and Gabrielle saw how one hand dropped over the ring of keys hanging from her leather belt so they would not clink together as she moved. You will follow me in pairs, said Sister Margarita. We walk with eyes lowered and hands out of sight. She glided through the doorway and down a vaulted corridor toward bracketed candles with motionless flames. Gabrielle took a last look at the smaller door to the visitors' parlor, where goodbyes to the family had just been said. Her father would still be standing there, his square surgeon's hands stroking his spade beard, as he acknowledged the salutations of those who recognized the foremost chest surgeon and heart specialist of Belgium, pretending a pride like the others for having given his only daughter to God. Got smoke in my eyes. She could feel on the skin of her forehead the cross he had traced there with his spatulate thumb when he had said farewell. She could still taste the plump, fine oysters from Zealand that he had ordered for her last meal in the world, the dry sparkle of the vintage Rudesheimer, which had cost him the fees of at least 5 visits to patients, and the ice cream, richly sauced with crushed glazed chestnuts, which she loved. Because he opposed her entering the convent, he had called for all the tempting things of life to speak to her where he had failed, unaware that what he was really putting into her like a probing pain was a last view of him tucking his neckpin into the wing collar under his beard, smelling the wine cork before allowing the waiter to pour a drop, and drinking the juice from the big rough oyster shells with gusty gourmet pleasure. And over the coffee, the last sight of his round, bold meerschaum, golden brown with age and fondling, and of his blue eyes looking at her through the smoke while he talked as to a colleague of his medical problems. He never once mentioned the convent or gave her a chance to tell him that it was not lord or schoolgirl admiration for any nun which had brought her there, nor heartbreak because of his refusal to let her marry Jean, because his mother had died in an insane asylum, and her doctor father could not put upon her the risk of reproducing madness, but the pressing sum of them all. And maybe even, cher papa, she whispered to the closed door as she passed it, maybe even a calling to the vocation because of the way you brought us up. She stared at the ankles of the girl ahead of her, obviously one who had just stepped out of sabots into her first shoes, her sister now, one of that mixed multitude of unknown women who would be the only family she would ever have again. Why had her devout father opposed her entry? The peasant ankles stirred, the brogues shuffled forward. Gabrielle followed, walking erect with folded arms and hidden hands as she had learned to walk when scrubbed and sterile during the surgery room stage of her nursing training. She turned the corner and saw in one upward disobedient glance the whole chapel and the sisterhood that must replace in her heart all the lively affection she had ever known. It was a family of statues at which she stared. Let's try another. I'm not sure how many I'm going to smoke here though. Oh, I just missed that comment. I'm sorry. Catch up later. Some 200 sisters were already on their knees and soldierly arose down the long nave. The professed nuns in black veils knelt in a double row of carved stalls along either wall, and the novices in white veils in 3 straight rows down the central aisle that ended at the altar. The folds of their choir capes fell around them on the floor and covered their turned-back feet. Viewed from the visitors' gallery, where the mistress led the postulants, it was a faceless community of draped and motionless torsos lined up and spaced evenly one from the other as though set down by a precision instrument. Jean seemed to slip in beside her as she tried to pray, taking the place of the caped figure, kneeling at her right. His hushed voice was without bitterness now as he reminded her of the many things she had given up besides himself. She pressed her palms more tightly against her eyes to darken the bright scenes his words evoked, of high windy ledges in the Ardennes where they used to rest after climbs, of bicycle paths through Flanders leading away towards the sea, of hidden hollows along the dunes into which they often dropped breathless after racing each other. I'm going to miss your wide, wide world, blessed Lord, she whispered tremulously, possibly even more than the man who opened it up for me. I must not have loved him enough to fly in the face of Papa's disapproval. I must have loved Papa more. Or was it simply that old-fashioned obedience to a parent's wishes which gave me strength to resist? Obedience is a key word in this sanctified place, so they tell us. Am I just one small step along the obscure way to you for having been able to obey Papa instead of my heart? Obey. It has an ordir in its root. Ordir, to hear, to give ear to. But I seem to hear nothing, blessed Lord, during all those weeks of tormenting indecision, except Jean's voice calling challenges. She heard nothing now except her own inner voice and the quickening breath of her gaped companion, who was looking through her locked fingers at the rows of nuns below. For the first 5 days, they were kept apart from the community of nuns in a special wing that had its own dormitory. study hall and refectory, but they could feel nevertheless its vast and disciplined presence as they prepared for their entrance into it, learning the signs that took the place of speech and the ways to open doors without rasp of hinge or lock, accustoming their eyes to look downward and their hearts to lift up to the ultimate goal of being in constant conversation with God. Caught that one. Thanks. I'm going to examine my performance later and critique myself strongly. It was, Gabriel thought, like being in quarantine before a border crossing into a country of silence. It practiced the gestures of life in that country and learned its laws and daily readings from the Holy Rule. The rule was a Baedeker, I don't know, to the cloistered life. It mapped monuments and battlegrounds and described the customs of poverty, chastity, and obedience in minute detail. You even learned that the long serge skirt must be lifted from the rear when going downstairs to prevent its wasteful wearing on stones. The new frontier extended beyond sight and imagination into the unexplored terrain of interior as well as exterior silence. Gabrielle felt it pressing inward to include within its nets and bounds that central place where many voices talked back to her in undiminished echoes from her past. Interior silence, said Sister Margarita, is one of the bases of the monastic life, one of the powers of God. The mistress's singular low voice gave Gabrielle the impression that she was lip-reading. It took all her will not to turn her head to see if her companions had heard anything. Interior silence, she repeated silently. That would be her Waterloo. How, without brain surgery, could you quell the rabble of mysteries, or memories? Even as she asked herself the question, she heard her psychology professor saying quite clearly across a space of years, no one, not even a saint, can say an Ave straight through without some association creeping in. This is a known thing. He had on the table before him a plaster of Paris model of a human brain which came apart. He lifted off the parietal lobe and used it to gesture with it as he repeated, not even one Ave. And she saw the bright red and blue tracery of its painted veins and arteries superimposed momentarily on Sister Margarita's scapula. It was more awesome to look at the silent world of its sisterhood than to receive instruction about it. Each morning, when the postulants filed into the chapel for Mass, the nuns were already in place, looking as if they had not moved since the first day. Gabrielle could not imagine how they could stay so still, especially the novices kneeling down the central aisle with nothing but air to support them. No spine sagged, no muscle moved to disturb a marble fold. She knew there were old and young ones in that community, nervous novices fighting for the perfection of immobility, rheumatic nuns perhaps soon to celebrate their golden jubilees in the religious life, nursing sisters from the convent hospital who might have sat up all night in vigil over a patient, and some quite possibly who had spent the night on their knees in penance or prayer. But no signs of age, infirmity or weariness could be detected. How are we doing here? That smoke is disturbing my nose. Later on, when she was one of them and had learned that the older nuns always put the best foot forward when new postulants were present, living up to the discipline with almost superhuman courage and endurance to set a good example, she would still carry intact the reverent wonder of her first impressions. As she peered at them through her fingers, she would think of the one strand that tied her already to the statuesque seam. This was the number assigned to her the day she was registered. 1072, the number of a dead nun. The filament of number 1072 stretched far beyond the kneeling figures, beyond the sanctified grounds of the mother house, beyond the borders of Belgium and the shores of Europe. It described an arc over the curve of earth like an imaginary line of longitude, and ended in a thatched hut in the Katanga district of the Belgian Congo. There, barely 2 months before, a missionary sister had been stabbed to death by a black man gone berserk. In one of the recreation periods when speech was permitted, she She had learned about the previous holder of her number, the mistress of postulants, walking with a tongue-tied flock, had asked some of them what their numbers were, and to Gabrielle she had said, "You are blessed, sister. You have the number of Sister Marie Polycarp." With restrained and holy pride, she had told the story. What time is it? Oh, okay. About 10 more minutes. And finish a chapter. Maybe. It was strange how alive the numbers were. Not one had been allowed to lapse since the order was established at the end of the 18th century. How many postulants had passed through this mother house could never be guessed because there was no way of knowing how many times any number had been assigned for the lifetime of a nun. In some vellum-bound ledger in the Superior General's office, Gabrielle supposed there was a continuing record kept. A head count, as they called it in the world. She thought of it as a leaf count on a sturdy old vine that replenished itself from within and never put forth a new shoot until every stem below was tipped with life. Every time she looked at the sisterhood, she saw something new and unexpected. She could hardly believe that she had lived with nuns through all her boarding school days, had adolescent crushes occasionally, and, in her nursing training, had copied their calm in surgery when something went wrong and everyone else lost his head. You could grow up with nuns and never really see their secret and singular way of being. She could not believe her eyes when the mistress of postulants showed how the little office was held by every nun, and had been held so since the beginning of their cloistered time. Why had she not observed this before, she who loved to look at hands? Sister Margarita held her breviary in the curved palm of her right hand, with the thumb just touching the leather edge of the back cover. With the marker she opened to the office of the day, and brought her left thumb, with a bit of paper beneath it, over the pages of the left side to hold them open. This bit of paper, under the one finger that touches the pages, she said, preserves them from stain. We each make our own little thumb pad. Mine, you see, she held the paper disc, has a holy picture pasted upon it because I was not dowered for art and could not paint it prettily in watercolors as many sisters do. The little office, she explained, was read 7 times daily at the appointed hours by every sister, wherever she may be. Staring at the hands holding the book just so, Gabrielle could not recall having seen before what she was shown now. An edge of paper beneath a thumb, a touch so light and careful that the pressed page seemed to be open for the first time. Our work, said Sister Margarita, does not always permit us to go to chapel for devotions. Sometimes we must read them in kitchens, hospitals, schoolrooms, laundries, on trains or steamships if we're traveling. Wherever we are, we follow the hours of the mother house. Thus the care to keep our little office pure of soil. It must last a long time. She lifted her thumb and let the bit of paper slip back between the pages as the book fell shut in her hand. She glanced at it without possessiveness or pride as she added, "This one was given to me when I made my first vows. It will be replaced next year on my silver jubilee." The living rule rose up from her chair in a single movement of strength that flowed straight from her knees. She motioned the transfixed postulants to their feet and waited until the shuffling subsided. Her hands slipped beneath the scapula as she started to speak. "Now, my sisters, you will go to the chapel for your last prayers before you enter our blessed community." She smiled and nodded. "Tomorrow is the day. Tomorrow you will pray for the help you need, each one speaking to God in her own way. As when you were children in the world and wanted something very badly, ask him now to give you the things of the Spirit. Ask him in silence for strength in the practice of silence. Remember, interior silence is the very marrow of perfection, as told in our holy rule." "My Waterloo," Gabrielle said again to herself. "But I'll smother every voice that talks back to destroy my inner quiet. I don't know how I'll do this, but I will. All for Jesus." "All for Jesus," Sister William had said in the ward, pulling on the rubber gloves. "Say it, my dear students, every time you are called upon for what seems an impossible task. Then you can do anything with serenity. It is a talisman phrase that takes away the disagreeable inherent in many nursing duties. Say it for the bedpans you carry, for the old incontinence you bathe, for those sputum cups of the tubercular. Tout pour Jésus. Wait, how did they say that in France? I actually don't know the French pronunciation of Jesus. she said briskly as she bent to change a dressing foul with corruption. Gabrielle, Janine, Charlotte, come closer and watch how I do this. You see how easy? All for Jesus. This is no beggar's body picked up in the Rue de Radis. Someone... yes, hello. I know I'm probably missing so many messages. This is the body of Christ, and this suppurating sore is one of his wounds. There are words in here I do not know. Suppurating. All for Jesus. They used the talisman when they met each other in hospital corridors, carrying bedpans and kidney basins, elevating their reeking receptacles and murmuring, all for Jesus, as they passed. Yet, although they said it sometimes with the hysterical irreverence of youth, it did really work, as it had worked presumably for the courageous spirit of Sister William, who, until she had come from her ancestral chateau to the pauper's ward of the convent hospital, had not known... I'll look. Had not known the difference between a urinal and a flower vase, and had remarked, as she arranged roses in the tubular glass container, "This vase is quite original in form, is it not?" Gabrielle smiled as she advanced in the procession of postulants, unaware that her interior silence was non-existent. She went on thinking about Sister William. The sturdy little nun stood forth like a signpost, sure and readable in that terra incognita of the community she was to enter. It was like having something vital from her personal past waiting for her in the cloister, something she would not be required to uproot and cast out from memory, any more than she would be expected to shake from her hands the nursing knowledge Sister William had trained into them. She held imaginary dialogues with her teacher as she paced slowly. "Associations, sister. Now just exactly what to do. What do you do to subdue them?" She could not know then that it would be 3 years before she was allowed to address anything other than strictly duty words to Sister William, that although the familiar figure would often be within range of her longing eyes, the traditional separation of the perpetually vowed from postulants and novices would stand between them like a block of clear ice, through which Sister William herself would permit nothing more to pass than her silhouette and an occasional clinical glance. In the chapel, Gabrielle prayed to God to forgive her for taking comfort from the thought that someone else who knew her well, besides himself, would be there next day to welcome her into the community. And that's chapter 1. That works out well. We could do a chapter every time. I like this book. Do you like it? Do you like the nun story? It's interesting. There's a lot more in it than in the movie. It's interesting to be able to visualize it all in a more realistic way, since, movies, 1950s, not always the most realistic. Have you seen the nun story? Critiques. I need critiques. How can I improve? Other than knowing how to pronounce Jesus in French. Yeah, I'm gonna watch this later and watch my facial movements too, because that's also part of it, watching how her mouth moves. But when you speak with this accent, your mouth moves differently. I just haven't watched myself speak in a while. Yeah. Yeah, maybe I can find something I have in French that's not too difficult, that I can read over, maybe a little paragraph or something. I can't go too long in it. I also should try Dutch, but I need to look that over in advance, because there's so many words I do not know. But French and Dutch, trying it with her accent would be interesting. I would like to learn to speak Dutch with her accent. Apparently it's a very old-fashioned accent. Not many people speak like that anymore, so... But, thank you. I feel less committed than I should be. I have been kind of lazy, but I'm glad to be finally doing this. This gives me, more reason to practice. I can try to see if I can do this weekly or bi-weekly or something, and look up some French things and Dutch things, and I actually have the Diary of Anne Frank in English and in Dutch, but I looked at that and thought, Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of afraid of choking on the smoke. But, yay. Yeah, I'll try to look. I'll look back through all these comments too and see what I missed there. Yes, so yeah, I can look for something that I can read in French. I don't think I could go a whole half hour in French, but yeah, a little bit. I should practice that too. What else? What else? I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing here. No. Yeah, so I'm gonna see if I can save the live stream or part of it, not the beginning, and maybe I'll have to steal some next week or the week after, and I'll try it. I try to do healthy things and not. What do I drink? Water. Yeah. I'll do some real cigarettes and see how that goes. But I also don't want to do too many of those. I like to stay healthy. But what was I gonna say? Yeah, next week. I'll see. I mean, the summertime I can do it later in the day too because it stays light out. So I might switch to doing it like after dinner. Um, so then it's earlier on the West Coast. I don't know where everyone is, but we'll see. I mean, this is good for now, but not on days when I have to make dinner, because then I should be making dinner now. But I guess that's it for now. And I will let you know when the next one is. I'll see about next week. I don't know if I'll do it like every week or every other week, but I will let you know. And I'm so glad so many people stopped by, and look forward to reading your messages and critiques and improving. Yeah, so hopefully I'll look back after weeks of doing this and see how I've improved with your help. So, bonsoir. I'll talk to you later. Twice a week. I mean, that probably would be good for me to practice twice a week, but we'll see. I keep myself kind of busy, so it's hard to schedule things in. Oh, mosquitoes. Okay, yes, time to go in. I am going to be itching. Okay, I will read them. I hope so. That's my dream. Working on it. All right, I'm going to end it now. So I will talk to you later. Thanks for coming. I am very pleased that 20 people showed up. So that's a success, I think. Bye. I don't even know how to end this.